I never thought my life would turn into one of those sordid tales you hear whispered about in hushed tones. Claire and I had been married for 6 years, a partnership that seemed, at least on the surface, to be built on trust and shared dreams. But what I didn't know was that beneath the veneer of our happy marriage lurked betrayal. It began with subtle changes. Claire, once attentive and warm, became distant, her phone an extension of her hand. She started staying out late, citing work meetings or catching up with old friends. I wanted to believe her. After all, she was my wife, the woman I vowed to trust. But suspicions crept in. One evening, she came home wearing a perfume I hadn't bought her. Her lipstick was slightly smudged, and her demeanor screamed guilt. When I asked her about it, she laughed it off, accusing me of being paranoid. I decided to confront my unease. A friend suggested hiring a private investigator, a step I hesitated to take but ultimately pursued. Within days, I had the evidence I dreaded. Photos of Claire with another man, their intimacy undeniable. My heart shattered, and anger boiled within me, but I stayed silent, biding my time. Claire's recklessness escalated. She grew bolder, no longer caring to hide her escapades. She'd lie straight to my face, her stories riddled with inconsistencies. It was as if she thought I was too blind or too naive to notice. Little did she know, I was watching, documenting, and preparing. One fateful night, everything unraveled. Claire had left for what she claimed was a weekend with her girlfriends. I followed her to a secluded cabin where she met her lover. From the shadows, I watched as the life I had known crumbled before my eyes. The confrontation was inevitable. I barged into the cabin, catching them off guard. Claire's lover fled, leaving her to face the storm alone. The arguments were heated, emotions running high. She confessed to her infidelity, blaming me for being too predictable and boring. Her words were knives cutting deep, but they also unveiled the truth. I had been holding on to a lie. As we argued, the storm outside grew fierce. Thunder roared, and lightning illuminated the dark forest surrounding us. In her fury, Claire stormed out into the night, ignoring my pleas for her to stay. That was the last time I saw her alive. The next morning, search parties found her lifeless body at the base of a ravine. She had slipped on the rain-soaked ground, her recklessness costing her everything. The reality of her death hit me like a tidal wave. Despite her betrayal, I had loved her once. In the aftermath, I reflected on the choices that led us here. Claire's infidelity and my decision to uncover it had set a chain of events in motion that neither of us could escape. Her recklessness, in both her affair and her final moments, had sealed her fate. Though her betrayal still haunts me, I've come to terms with it. The pain taught me resilience and the importance of self-worth. Her story serves as a cautionary tale of how deception and recklessness can lead to devastating consequences. After Claire's death, the police ruled it an accident. There was no foul play, just a tragic misstep in the chaos of her fleeing into the storm. Her family was devastated, and I found myself torn between mourning the woman I had loved and grappling with the betrayal that had tarnished her memory. The funeral was a somber affair. People whispered condolences, unaware of the dark truth behind our fractured marriage. Her parents clung to me, believing I had been the devoted husband they'd always thought I was. I felt like an actor in a grim play, hiding the scars Claire had left behind. Weeks turned into months, but the void in my life remained. I started going through Claire's belongings, trying to find some sense of closure. Among her things, I found letters, messages, and photos that painted a clearer picture of her affair. It wasn't just one man, it had been several. Each discovery was another wound, reopening the pain I thought I had buried. But as I pieced together the fragments of her double life, I also uncovered something unexpected. Beneath her selfish actions and lies, there were signs of inner turmoil. Journal entries revealed her guilt and confusion, her struggle to reconcile the life she wanted with the one she had. She wrote about feeling trapped, about longing for freedom, but fearing the consequences of breaking away. For the first time, I saw Claire as more than just a villain in my story. She was flawed, reckless, and selfish, yes, but also human. Her choices were unforgivable, but they stemmed from her own fears and insecurities. I decided to let go of the anger. Holding on to it would only poison me further. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my life. Therapy helped me process the betrayal and loss. I reconnected with friends I had distanced myself from during the marriage. Slowly, I began to heal. One day, I visited the ravine where Claire had fallen. Standing there, I felt the weight of everything we had been through, our love, our struggles, her infidelity, and her tragic end. I whispered a quiet goodbye, letting the wind carry my words. Claire's recklessness had led to her terrible end, but it also taught me a profound lesson. Life is fragile, and trust is sacred. Her story, though painful, became a turning point for me, a reminder to cherish honesty, to seek fulfillment without deception, and to never lose myself in someone else's shadow. Now, I live with a clearer sense of who I am and what I deserve. Claire's memory remains, not as a source of bitterness, but as a testament to the complexity of human relationships and the consequences of our choices. As time passed, the sharp edges of my pain softened, replaced by a bittersweet sense of acceptance. I would never fully understand Claire's choices or the darkness that had consumed her, but I chose to release the burden of needing to. The future awaited, and I refused to let her actions define the rest of my life. Returning to work was the first step toward normalcy. My colleagues were kind, offering words of encouragement without prying too deeply. They didn't know the full story, and I preferred it that way. The fewer people who knew the ugly truth, the better. It wasn't about protecting Claire's memory, but about protecting my peace. One afternoon, while sorting through old files at home, I came across our wedding album. I hadn't dared to open it since her death, but something compelled me to now. As I flipped through the pages, I saw the younger versions of ourselves smiling brightly, full of hope and promise. It struck me how much we had both changed. The Claire in those photos wasn't the woman who had betrayed me. She was someone who had once loved me with all her heart, and for a time, I had been her whole world. The memories weren't tainted by her later choices. They were a reminder that we had, at one point, shared something real. The discovery gave me clarity. It was possible to honor the good parts of our relationship without ignoring the bad. Claire's actions had hurt me deeply, but they didn't erase the love we once shared. Eventually, I found myself ready to move forward. I joined a local support group for people recovering from infidelity and loss. Hearing others share their stories reminded me that I wasn't alone, and it gave me the courage to open up about my own experiences. It was through this group that I met someone who would change my life in ways I never expected. Her name was Lila, a kind-hearted woman who had been through her own storm of betrayal. We bonded over our shared pain, but also over our determination to rebuild and find happiness again. Our connection grew slowly, built on honesty and mutual respect. With Lila, I felt a sense of ease I hadn't known in years. There were no secrets, no hidden agendas. Just two people learning to trust again. As our relationship deepened, I realized that what I had with Lila was something Claire and I had never achieved. True emotional intimacy. It wasn't perfect, and we both carried scars from our past, but it was real. One evening, as Lila and I walked hand in hand along a quiet trail, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Claire's recklessness had left a mark on my life, but it no longer defined me. Her story was a chapter in my book, not the whole story. Looking back, I realized that her tragic end wasn't just a cautionary tale. It was also a reminder of the importance of self-awareness, communication, and the courage to confront difficult truths. I had learned these lessons the hard way, but they had brought me to a better place. Now, as I face the future with Lila by my side, I carry the wisdom of those painful experiences. Life may be unpredictable, but I am stronger for having endured its trials. Claire's memory remains a part of me, but it no longer haunts me. Instead, it serves as a reminder to cherish what truly matters and to live with integrity and compassion. Life with Lila was refreshingly simple, yet profoundly fulfilling. We had our challenges, as any relationship does, but they were faced with openness and a shared commitment to transparency. Trust was a fragile thing for both of us, something we nurtured carefully, brick by brick, knowing how devastating its loss could be. For a long time, I avoided discussing Claire with Lila. It wasn't that I wanted to keep secrets, but I feared that revisiting the past might taint the present. However, as we grew closer, it became clear that I couldn't fully embrace our future without being honest about my journey. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I finally told her everything. From Claire's infidelity to the tragic night she died, I laid bare the pain, anger, and eventual acceptance that had shaped me. Lila listened intently, her hand never leaving mine. When I finished, she simply said, "Thank you for trusting me enough to share that." There was no judgment in her eyes, only empathy and understanding. That moment solidified something between us, an unspoken promise that we would face our past together, not as burdens, but as stepping stones to a brighter future. In the years that followed, Lila and I built a life that felt like a second chance. We traveled to places I had always dreamed of visiting, but never had the courage to explore. We started a small business together, blending her creativity with my organizational skills. Every step felt like reclaiming a piece of the life I thought I had lost. Claire's shadow lingered, but it no longer loomed ominously. Occasionally, I would visit her grave, bringing a single flower as a token of respect. It wasn't about guilt or unresolved feelings. It was my way of acknowledging her role in my life's journey. Despite everything, she had been a part of my story, and I had come to terms with that. One particularly poignant moment came when Lila and I decided to marry. Standing at the altar, exchanging vows, I felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for Lila, but for the path that had led me to her. My experiences with Claire had taught me to value honesty and cherish love that was built on solid ground. As we celebrated with family and friends, I caught myself thinking about Claire. For a fleeting moment, I wondered what might have been different if we had faced our problems head-on instead of letting them fester. But then I looked at Lila, her eyes filled with joy, and I knew that everything had unfolded as it was meant to. The recklessness of my cheating wife had once brought my world crashing down, but it had also set me on a path of growth and self-discovery. Through the pain, I had learned to love myself, to forgive, and to open my heart again. Claire's tragic end was a reminder of the consequences of living a life divided, but it was also a catalyst for my own transformation. Now, I live each day with intention, grateful for the lessons of the past and hopeful for the future. The scars remain, but they no longer define me. Instead, they are a testament to resilience, a reminder that even in the face of betrayal and loss, it is possible to find happiness again,